And by the way, people, I don't even know what's coming. So, every one of these is like a bit of a surprise to me. The next one I can see is a Theory of a Deadman record. I'm going to pull up. See, I didn't know this was coming, so I haven't prepared anything, but I'm going to pull up Theory of a Deadman and I'm going to pull up this album. And the album is Scars and Souvenirs, I believe. Yeah, Scars and Souvenirs. Great album. That's one of the things that listening on streaming services has altered, which is I'm much more conscious of singles, much less conscious of albums. Because I don't tend to listen to albums as a whole. I don't sort of come to my office and say, oh, I feel like listening to this entire album. I'm more likely to put on a playlist of something like a playlist I've created. Like, so for example, Theory of a Deadman. Yeah, I've got my own playlists. I mean, I signed them. I love the band, but that doesn't mean I want to hear every single song every single time so I have a playlist of my favorites. And as it turns out, a bunch of my favorites are actually on this album. I should hold this up so that people can see it. Whoa. So here it is. This was presented to 604 in January of 2025, so not that long ago. Certified double platinum, so that's why. So like that's how the plaque thing works. So the plaque thing's interesting too. I should talk about that because I don't think I ever really, because there's some interesting stuff just about plaques. And just to be clear, I'm talking about these kind of plaques, not my teeth. Get it? Plaque on my teeth? Get it? Anyway. Yeah, when I was first in the business, a gold record was 50,000 sales, and a platinum record was 80,000 or 100,000 sales. Just as a sign of how the music business has changed, they altered that, and that would have been about a decade ago, I think. A gold record is 40,000 sales. A platinum record is 80,000 sales. So I'm horrible with math, but what is that? Well, if it was, it's 20%. It's a 20% deduction, which was really just a reflection of the fact that people don't buy albums the way they used to. So a little bit sad, but because this, given the year this plaque was issued, double platinum would mean now 160,000 units sold, which is still a hell of a lot of units and still something to be very proud of, which we are. But this was an interesting album because, Theory of a Deadman initially had such hype around them, mostly because of Nickelback, because, we had signed them, first band. Chad produced the first record, worked very closely with them. And, at that point, when they stopped working, with Chad as a producer, they sort of had to find their own way. And that affiliate, I think I talked about this with them on the podcast I did with them earlier this year or late last year, I guess. That was a difficulty. Like, because on the one hand, Chad's, if it wasn't for Chad, they wouldn't have a career. On the other hand, I think after that first album, they got asked about Chad so much. And, there are all the jokes, Theory of a Nickelback, ha ha ha, like it was sort of a double-edged sword. Because on the one hand, were it not for Chad producing that record and signing them, etc., none of the rest of the great stuff would have happened. And then on the other hand, it's like, hey, we're not Nickelback, we're Theory of a Deadman, and we want to be treated as a separate entity. And so there was a lot of pressure on them. This album, I think it's their third album. God, I should know this, and I don't. I think it's their third album, Scars and Souvenirs. First album was the self-titled. Second album was Gasoline, I think. And then I think this was the third album. Thank you. So they were in a funny spot. Like Gasoline did well, and that was a huge album for them. Again, in part because it was the first album they did without Chad. And it did great, Santa Monica and No Surprise. Like, it did well. This album also did very well. So Happy did well. Not Meant to Be did well. But I will tell you one reason this album means a lot to me is it has my favorite Theory of a Deadman song. which also happens to be my favorite Theory of a Deadman video, which is the song All or Nothing. All or Nothing was interesting for a couple of reasons. I think I talked about this with Theory on that podcast, but what I remember about it is like, this is one of those deals we did, and we've done a bunch of these where we own the rights in Canada, but a different label owns the rights outside of Canada. In this case, it was Atlantic Records who own the rights outside of Canada on this record, and which just is what it is. But why All or Nothing was significant is I believed in that song so much. I really did, and I don't think they even released it as a single in the States. And we had the right to put songs out in Canada that weren't necessarily singles in the rest of the world. We didn't need the permission of Atlantic to release singles. But we also made a video, which I think was the first time. It was a video that the US didn't pay for or contribute to, because I just don't think they believed in the song the same way I did, which is fine. But we made this video for the song. And, that was a big deal to us. The fact that we were basically going out on our own with this song without any support really from the Atlantic side. And the song did great. And the video did great. And if you ever go and look at that video, which I strongly recommend, and it's funny, we were just trying to upscale it to do a 4K version. And 4K is weird. Sometimes it just doesn't look right. And this is one of those ones where it just didn't look right. I haven't given up. We're going to try some other ways of getting it upscaled. But it's such a funny video. It's the video where it starts with like this guy getting into his car. And it's got sort of this vaguely kind of 50s vibe to it. Like everybody's dressed almost like, what was that show in the 70s? Happy Days. It's got a little bit of that kind of 50s rolled up jeans, kind of, I don't know if that was ever stated in the treatment for the video that it's supposed to be from the 1950s, but it feels that way. And the cars are kind of 1950s. But I love it because the guy, he comes out and you see him walking with his bag, which as it turns out is a bag of money that he's putting up to bet in this drag race. You don't know that at that point in the video, but the guy is walking to his car. And the girlfriend comes running out of the house, and she's, you can't hear what they're saying because you're hearing the music, but you can you get the idea, she's kind of like, don't go, please don't go. And he's like, he puts his hand up like like a stop sign, and she sort of stops in her tracks. And basically he's like, listen, I'm going, give me a break here. I'm going. So he gets in this car and he drives. And they meet up for this drag race. And that scene's funny too, because, he gets out of the car with his bag of money, and then he confronts the other guy he's going to race against, who's also got a bag of money, and they get into each other's face. And then this other guy comes along, and he's kind of like, if you could read his lips, it's kind of like, listen, you fucking idiots, just give me the money and get in your cars and have your stupid race already. It's a great video. It's also the one where while they're playing, all the various characters in the video kind of circle around them. And it's unusual. It's strange when you see it. And I've always said it reminds me of that scene in the movie Midnight Express. And I'm definitely dating myself here because that was a big movie in the 70s. And it was a movie about a guy, I think based on a true story, about a tourist in Turkey who tried to smuggle a small quantity of hashish out of Turkey, and he gets caught and he gets thrown into his horrid Turkish jail where just all sorts of horrible abuses and are happening. But I don't know if it's a function of the insanity of being locked up in a horrible jail, but like once a day, they would a bunch of the prisoners would sort of circle this pool. And it was, I don't know, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but almost like this ritualistic thing they were doing to somehow cope with the fact that they were in this horrible jail. And there's something about those scenes in the Theory of a Deadman video where everybody's walking around them in a circle. It kind of reminds me of that. Like it's kind of weirdly creepy, but kind of cool. Like it's interesting. So that for me, I mean, when I think about that album, that's one of the best memories for me is that we believed in that song. We put it out as a single. We made a video, even though the States didn't follow suit. And to have it succeed like that, because remember that was the first band we signed. And we had some other successes by, I think, 2008 when that album came out, or 2008, I think. But still, that meant a lot. Because that was a band a lot of people counted out. They're just Nickelback clones and blah, 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 blah. But, they're still going. I mean, here we are 24 years after I signed them, and they're touring the world. They're having a blast. We had such a good time on that podcast. They're good people. And, that one just felt great. That album really was a big album for the label, for all the reasons I've been talking about. So yeah, questions?
A lot of people saying that online of like timing was absolutely perfect for them and the kind of post-grunge boom of like Nickelback and stuff. Yeah, yeah. And then I've seen a lot of stuff about nostalgia now of like their music kind of takes them back to that time that people really liked.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I was hearing something about this on the radio today, I think. What radio was I listening on? The drive-in. I know what it was. I was listening to a podcast on the drive-in. Somebody had sent it to me. They said, "Hey, they talk about you at the 12-minute mark. They talk about you." So, being the egomaniac that I am, of course, I had to hear that. So, but that came up in the conversation that bands from that period of time are having a real resurgence. Creed in Canada, Thornley. Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting, sort of hearing that on a podcast today from a couple of people in the music business kind of saying, hey, we're not even sure why, but that music is suddenly everywhere again. And hey, listen, I love it. I mean, we own a couple of Thornley albums. Obviously I work with Nickelback. Theory of a Deadman isn't signed here anymore, but we still own the catalog. So, that kind of news makes me very happy when I hear that kind of music's making a real resurgence.
This was kind of the moment you were saying about people were counting out. This was kind of the moment where they had kind of answered that question, if that makes sense. This album was this, the way you talked about, say, Nickelback with like when Rockstar and stuff came out and like it was a big hit and all the kind of doubts were answered. Was this the same moment for Theory?
I think in a way it was. Like, I think it took a while for Theory, because I don't want to make it sound like, again, it's Chad's fault. Like, Chad supported them. He didn't do anything wrong. In fact, quite the opposite. He did nothing but support the band. I understand both sides of this one, why there were sort of bad feelings on both sides. I think it took a while for Theory to kind of get that chip off their shoulder. I think they had a chip on their shoulder, not even so much about Chad, but just about the comparisons and the constant comparisons. And, like we were also working with Default, and who also were accused of that. In fact, the actual joke I used to hear was Theory of a Nickel Fault, or I don't know, like it's so stupid. Because as far as I'm concerned, those three bands sound nothing alike. But people like to label shit for some reason. It makes it easier to, I don't know what it makes it easier to do. But I think they were still at that period of time where it was important to them to forge a separate identity. And so, yeah, I think that probably for them personally was also a big album, because it just was another step of kind of saying, hey, we are who we are. We're not just a Nickelback clone. We're not just living in Chad's shadow. We're our own people. We're our own band. And I think that probably is very true.
One of the things that people always say, even people who don't like them or that kind of music, is that the hooks are really strong. I remember you mentioned
on that album, or just generally?
Well, generally with them, but kind of a lot of the songs that people would talk about like that are on that album. So probably that album is probably the center point of that.
I think that's true. I mean, it's funny too, though, because I think this also came up in my podcast with Theory. I've always kind of been partial to the ballads with them. And I love the rock stuff too. The songs that have stuck with me tend to be the ballads. Like All or Nothing's almost a ballad. It's more, I guess, a mid-tempo song, but it's ballady. Hello Lonely is one of my favorite Theory of a Deadman songs. That's a ballad. I think Tyler's very strong with ballads. He's strong with all of it, but yeah.
I remember you mentioned that Chad is always whenever he's producing music, is very keen on hooks being everywhere in the song.
True.
Do you think that as much as they would both say we're our own thing, do you think maybe that's maybe one of the big reasons of point of comparison is a lot of their success is down to strong hooks for both?
I don't think so, because when Theory decided on the second album they were going to work with a different producer, they chose a very good, very respected, very successful producer named Howard Benson. And I think really at that point, it was his baby. Now, they may have learned some lessons from the Chad experience. I'm sure they did. And maybe those lessons got applied on subsequent recordings. I'm not sure. But Howard's very much his own guy. So whatever they may have been doing in the studio with Chad, very different vibe. I went to some of the sessions on Gasoline down in LA when they were working with Howard, and the vibe was kind of night and day different from working with Chad. Here's this Theory of a Deadman plaque again to show everybody. So I have a version of this at home. It probably would have been, so this is double platinum. So it probably would have been the gold record or maybe the platinum record, the original one. And so, the cover that I just showed you is a like an X-ray device. It's an X-ray. I have a plaque of that at home that plugs in, and the shot of the skeleton lights up, and it's good shit. It's really good shit. I only have 2 plug-in. No, I guess there's 3. There's a Mariana's Platinum or something. I think it was Masterpiece Theater that plugs in. And then that Nickelback plaque plugs in, and the headlights on the car light up right there. So